All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be digging into the U.S. retail scene, specifically for February 2025, so pretty recent stuff.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at a really interesting article by factoring specialist Chris Lanes. Now, I don't know if everyone's familiar with factoring specialists, but they basically help businesses manage their cash flow.
Right.
So they have a great pulse on, like, what's actually happening in the retail world in terms of, how money's moving around.
Makes sense.
And one of the things that really caught our eye from this article is this kind of weird contrast. Like, retail sales are actually up, which is, generally a good thing. But at the same time, consumer sentiment is like all over the place. So that's kind of the puzzle we're going to try to unpack today. Like, how can both of these things be true at the same time?
Well, that's the really interesting thing right now. We're seeing all these economic pressures, inflation, interest rates, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And yet the U.S. Census Bureau actually reported a 0.3% rise in retail sales from January to February, which, it's not a massive jump, but after a slight dip in January, it does suggest some resilience in consumer spending.
So it's not like people are just, like, shutting their wallets and, like, hiding under the covers.
Exactly.
They're still out there buying stuff.
Yep, they're buying. But it's really interesting when you look at what they're buying.
What are they buying?
It seems like the growth is really being fueled by those essential items. Groceries, health products, gas, the things you absolutely need.
Right, the stuff you can't really avoid.
Exactly, not necessarily the fun stuff.
Right.
Which, again, kind of points to the fact that people are feeling the pinch of inflation, and they're being a bit more careful about where they spend their money.
Yeah, and that actually ties in really nicely with another point the article brought up, which is the strength of e-commerce.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of this whole story.
Yeah.
Online shopping is just booming right now. E-commerce sales are growing way faster than overall retail, and they're capturing a much bigger slice of the market share. Like, we're talking almost 20% now compared to, what was it, like 15% just a few years ago?
Wow, 20%. That's a big jump.
It's massive, and it's really reshaping the whole retail landscape.
Yeah. I mean, it's no surprise then that traditional retailers are having a tough time, as the article mentioned, especially like department stores and apparel.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to compete with the convenience and often, lower prices of online shopping.
Right.
And this is especially true, I think, for younger generations who are like super comfortable buying almost everything online.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, what's the future hold for these brick and mortar stores? Like, how do they adapt to this new reality? But, but before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's circle back to consumer sentiment for a second.
Right.
The article said it was mixed.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
So consumer sentiment is basically like the overall feeling people have about the economy. Are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? It's measured through surveys, and it takes into account things like personal finances, job security, expectations for the future.
Okay.
And right now, it's kind of a mixed bag. You've got some people who are feeling pretty good about the economy, while others are really worried about things like inflation and a potential recession.
So, like, this kind of goes back to our original questions of, right? Like, if people are feeling uncertain, how sustainable is this retail growth that we're seeing?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, if consumer confidence really takes a hit and people start pulling back on spending, even on those essentials, then retail sales could definitely slow down.
So it seems like we've got this weird situation going on where there's this cautious optimism in the retail sector. It's being fueled by spending on those essential items, but at the same time, the rise of e-commerce is like transforming the entire shopping experience.
Yeah, it's like this underlying current that's changing everything.
Exactly. And then looming over all of this is consumer sentiment, which could really make or break the future of retail.
Absolutely. And that brings up, I think, a really crucial question. What does the future hold for those brick and mortar stores? Can they find innovative ways to compete? Can they create experiences that actually draw shoppers back in?
That's a great point. It's a question worth thinking about. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of retail. Definitely a lot to ponder as always, but we'll catch you next time.